There's enough people today.
Yay!
Good.
Right.
Nothing big. We got.
We are live on Facebook, correct?
Oh, I guess I need to
They're on the countdown.
Share
Oh, snaps.
Did everybody want to make quick introductions or no? Or
We
not?
do the same way we always do.
I just meant like so we know
Who is?
we have a lot of guests. That's good.
Yeah. True. Take up the whole first.
Just like, hey, I'm Beth. Oh, we are doing that.
We are doing.
Okay.
Yeah, it might not
Horse
say
skills.
'cause you got the case on
I gave you a little report on it.
It should be. Oh, it should be okay.
it. You friend requested that too. It's a lot heavier than yours.
Yeah, I have that extra.
I told you. I said, listen, man, it's real true. We gotta go real strong. I don't know, man.
Campuses.
I don't know. I'll tell you about you.
Yay.
No games. All right.
All right, see.
I know, right?
We're going to have a cheery, good old time.
What? Look at this here.
Okay, so we're on the countdown. For those who haven't, Pastor Bishop, first of all, just know his name is Pastor Bishop.
Pastor Bishop.
So you had to get him a mic because his name, first of all, is Pastor.
Hey, man, I'm just going to be bishop tonight. How about that?
The Honorable Pastor Bishop.
That's it.
This is crazy fancy.
Man, so,
It's pretty cool, man. I mean, like, you can pick up
Mine's
everything. You can
not
just whisper.
cooperating now.
Because I believe you probably, everyone can hear me.
Oh, yeah, we hear you.
Absolutely.
Oh yes. We can hear you.
No whispering.
All right, so the purple parts are where, of course, it's Facebook Live. It won't be on the official show when it comes on the podcast. The green part is where it won't be on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to be talking to Facebook Live and things like that, answering questions and all that. The purple is where we're going to talk.
So when the purple stops, you stop talking and give us a little break, and then we'll be talking on Facebook Live amongst ourselves. So you have to be looking at the screen, otherwise me or Dave will be like, and we will be back. And
Right.
we will cut you right off.
cut you off.
Yeah,
And we're not being rude. It's just that's how.
You're being rude, man.
Yeah, I know. Only to you, Antoine.
So sweet. Don't you feel the love?
So like, okay, Lauren.
Girl, you can't be screaming and stuff all willy nilly like that.
This is a one segment show. So these segments are longer. This isn't like the article show, so it's gonna be pretty cool.
All
We're gonna talk a lot about parent empowerment today. We're gonna be talking about charter schools, public charter schools, and homeschooling, and
Are we going to talk
education
about
reform.
the latest episodes in this Betsy Duval being secretary?
No.
well, you're here, so of
I
course
know.
we are, Antoine. We know you will.
We're gonna try
Right?
to.
Well, I am.
We're gonna try.
That's what I'm talking about. Absolutely.
So,
We're
Beth,
gonna try
I
to
never
cover-
covered inside
I
the line, so
We're gonna try and cover all of that, and then I'm sure we'll have lots of
yeah, she don't want-
Antoine-isms
She
in
don't want
there.
poor kids to have free lunch. She said that.
Me? My kids ate off of the free lunch,
All
so
right.
we're gonna talk about it.
Your current education
We're gonna talk
secretary
about
doesn't
it.
want
We're gonna talk about it.
She don't even want
This
to
is-
But we're
Department
gonna
of
talk
Education,
about all
so
the stuff that we.
she don't want too much of
Absolutely.
anything.
All right. Hey, y'all. Free,
We're live on Facebook.
We're live.
yep. And Freethinkers Radio,
Just follow.
show 54.
Whoop, whoop.
So you can go to Facebook and share it on your page.
You got me going crazy. Something about you, your love is so amazing, and I know that you'll be everything I need. Your word brings me to life. Your word brings me to life. No matter where I go, I give you control.
Hello. Freethinkers Radio. This is show 54, Each One Teach One, part 2. We had an amazing show last week, and we're going to do this again. We're going to delve into this whole thing a little bit deeper. We got everybody here today, the whole table. Introduce yourselves, people. Let's see.
Hey y'all, I'm Lexi.
I'm Elliot.
Hey, guys. Oh, and I am Beth.
Elliot has middle names. Go ahead.
This is JB Sampson.
And we have a host of guests tonight.
Yes, we do.
Starting right here. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Catherine Robinson.
Catherine Robinson.
I am Kevin Raspberry.
Yes, sir.
I am Aaron Bishop.
Pastor Bishop.
I shall be Antoine Seawright.
Absolutely.
I got a choice.
And I am Joni Lawson.
Absolutely. And we are here to have an amazing show, and we're going to go through everything else you need to know about education. Feel free to think freely.
I just wanna talk.
And this first song we got tonight, this is Obvious by Hollis.
And I just wanna walk with you.
Absolutely. Everybody on Facebook Live, send in your questions. I guarantee you we got somebody that can answer it up here.
Just downloaded her EP. I haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah, this is going to be a good show, guys. Good show.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't you worry. They're going to tell you how they feel about you.
Isn't it obvious? Don't you know what you're missing?
Who was it? It was Britt Nicole who was at Winter Jam, right?
Yep.
Did they have they've ever had Holland at Winter Jam?
I don't think so. I was gonna say, how was Winter
They
Jam?
fix that. Jay said it was pretty cool.
Jay said it was good.
He had some nice comments about it. Eb! Eb is off camera, y'all. We tuned in to Stop the Silence at
Yo, you know she off camera. She done switch shoes and everything.
8:30. I'm telling you, chilling, chillaxing.
They don't see your feet on the radio show.
Hey.
I don't think this is working. Isn't it obvious? Take off your
So, Dave, why don't you tell Facebook what we're talking about?
Oh, okay. If you didn't know, Each One Teach One, we're going to talk about education reform. We're going to talk about parent empowerment. We're going to talk about homeschooling, public charter schools, legislation of the such, and absolutely education reform. Because what's more necessary than education reform? However you feel like that reform should happen.
Oh, yeah.
Fam, Ice. Ice keep the playlist hot.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Icy.
Here we go.
Freethinkers Radio, we're back, and we're discussing education reform. I had some things I wanted to ask about. Actually, I'm kind of curious, though. Antoine, you had some news to bring us about the latest in this saga. I kind of wanted to go ahead and get that out here.
Well, you know, the way I see it, David, is same story, different day. We talked thoroughly last week about how most of us would agree, and I say most, Beth, that Betsy DuVall is probably the most disastrous thing that ever happened to education in this country. So we talked very thoroughly about that. We talked about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the real ugly. And there was more real ugly than there will ever be good. But
And I agreed. I very much agreed.
Sure. I was just painting a picture. A good educator paints a picture for students who may not know the subject. So we're talking about education. So this week she spoke at CPAC, which is a right-wing nut job type conference in which a lot
And the
of
name calling.
right-wing conservatives speak. If just for a little context, they had a person who even Republicans thought should have not been the keynote speaker and had to change speakers. So fast forward to tape, President Trump spoke, VP Pence spoke, and Betsy DuVall spoke, our education secretary. One of the comments she said during her remarks, she went on the subject of free and reduced lunch and how she didn't think it was a good idea, and I'm paraphrasing, for students to have free and reduced lunch. Now, when we talked last week, and every comments I've ever given on this show was the fact that how, because she's a billionaire, because she's never attended public schools, because her kids never went to public schools, because she has no earthly idea how a public school is ran, then she doesn't know what goes on in a typical public school in America.
She can't
If
relate.
she comes to Richland 1, where I live, or she goes to Swansea, where I grew up, probably 40 to 60% of the students, including yours truly, were beneficiaries of free and reduced lunch. That's number one. Number two, I ran for school board in Richland 1. My friend here to my left supported me when I ran. I went to schools around Richland 1. I know for a fact that the only meal a lot of kids receive, not just in Columbia, but in South Carolina, around this country, is the meal they get at lunch. And so what happens, you have students who will tuck food away in the breakfast and lunch line because that's the only meal they receive. At my church,
You do realize the Department of Education does not control that, right?
No, that's not true. That's not true. You're stating alternative facts. That's not true. The Department of Education does control.
Okay, because my understanding is the Department of Agriculture does that.
No, that's not true.
Well, that's where you get your food from.
In fact, they regulate the standards for meals in this country, i.e., why our former First Lady Michelle Obama had a big kick on Let's Move and regulating school lunches in this country.
I've got a quick, just a thought to put out there.
Oh,
if I can
Jesus.
think freely here. So these students, and this is myself included, that have received free and reduced lunch, a lot of times are these not the same students that are getting other benefits for food on the outside, whether that be food stamps or what have you.
That doesn't matter. That does not matter.
So that
because
doesn't take into account their
no,
lunch?
No, heck no. That does not matter because at the end of the day, regardless of what happens, for most kids, particularly kids in poverty, and you and I had this poverty discussion last week, I don't think you really have a good glimpse of what poverty is. And I would welcome you to really learn about poverty in 2017. For most kids who are in poverty communities today, they have no idea what their home life is going to be like, whether that's right or wrong. But what we have a job to do as public education in this country is to make sure while they're in school for those set amount of hours, to give them the best shot of being able to compete in an ever-changing global society. And in order for them to effectively do that, from a learning standpoint, being fed properly is a big deal.
So one thing that we saw, and this is when we lived in Florida, and we lived in a very, very poor neighborhood. One thing that we saw happen was a lot of the parents were in really bad situations, whether they put themselves in it or not. And so then when they got food stamps, they actually sold their food so they can get money.
To
so
pay
they
the
can,
light bill.
Right.
Yeah.
To
Pay
pay
the rent.
many bills to keep their lights on. I mean, we always had people coming up to our door and asking us for food or for $10, and they would show us their bills. And so it wasn't just like they were just trying to get drugs or anything like that.
Right.
And so I think that a lot of times it is misunderstood because you haven't, and I get it. I've been there. I didn't understand it. I didn't grow up in that. And then when I got married, we lived in very, very poor situations. So I understand from that perspective, and from living in a community, doing ministry there, what it was like. And so I think that it's just a very complex situation. And when you are taking food away from families that you don't know if they're going to go home and eat, when churches are putting backpacks together for
My church
kids.
is one of them.
Yeah, and mine too. And so we have to make sure that these people are, being taken care of.
And then a scheduled lunch is kind of,
I'll make one other point about the conversation in CPAC. One of the things Betsy has done, our secretary has done, is she's also had strong conversations talking down on teachers. I have a real issue with that. My sister's the educator, right? I have a real issue that Miss Joni Lawson, who's one of my dear friends and who's an expert in the area, we know what goes on in the classroom in America. A lot of things that parents do not want to deal with in their own home, but the teachers have to deal with. The last thing we need is the person who runs and controls our schools talking down or talking about teachers, because they do God's work. They are probably doing the work that a lot of people would not do. And the fact that they are underpaid in so many regards, and the fact that this person does not even have the qualifications to be a classroom teacher in America. So how dare she talk down about classroom teachers? And I'll shut up because I will go on and
I would
on
like
and
to
on.
jump in right there.
Real quick, go ahead. I'll let you go first.
I think the quickest way to destroy any organization, whether it is education, business, entity, or wherever you're going to be, the quickest way to destroy it is to undermine the people that are driving it.
Well, you preaching good.
The people that are driving it are the people that are in the classrooms. And when you look at the hierarchy and the structure of education, the typically the people that are the closest to the students make the least amount of money. We got an issue there. The further away from the kid that you are, the more money that you make, honestly. And I think that it starts there with the compensation that we are giving our teachers, because they are doing amazing work here in South Carolina and across the nation. I also think that when you talk about teachers need to be told what to do, which was one of the statements that she made, teachers are waiting to be told what to do. That's an inaccurate assessment of what's going on in the classroom. Teachers are not being waited to told what to do. At the core of your good teachers, and there are so many good teachers that I have been able to be exposed to in the 9 years that I was a public school educator, that there are so many good teachers that automatically jump in and know what to do because of their training, because of the support that they get from their administration, if they have that supportive administration, because of their professional development that they receive. Of course, if that professional development program is laid out correctly and implemented. So when you start talking about the problem in education are the teachers, I think that is when you really start to undermine the entire situation itself. Period.
Right. Well, here's the quote from her, and this was how we were going to actually start the show before the CPAP thing happened. We wanted to talk about this. The quote is Betsy DeVos, her first tweet about her visit with the schools in Washington, D.C. I visited a school on Friday and met with some wonderful, genuine, sincere teachers who pour out their heart and soul into their classrooms and their students, and our conversation was not long enough to draw out of them what is limiting them from being even more successful from what they are currently. But I can tell the attitude is more of a receive mode. They're waiting to be told what they have to do, and that's not going to bring success to an individual child. You have to have teachers who are empowered to facilitate great teaching. Now, when I read it as a response to No Child Left Behind, is what I thought that was. Ms. Lawson?
Yeah, I was just going to say you're absolutely right about that. But the new bill that's replaced No Child Left Behind, Every Student Succeed Act, includes that teachers have to be at the table. Teachers have not been at the table in the decision-making process. Right. And so that's why we have all the issues. And if I can also just briefly talk about the nutrition thing, I know a lot of teachers personally who keep food in their classroom to feed their children. Teachers are now feeding, washing clothes, and doing a whole bunch of stuff that's not normal for a classroom teacher. And food and nutrition is so important to the learning process that even now you have school districts, and Richland one may have been that they even packed food over the summer so children can eat over the summer, because children really are in poverty so bad in the state until we have to take that on and make sure that they have food even in the summertime.
I just want to add,
even now they're moving toward, I know that some schools in Richland one are completely free.
Yes.
The entire school. There was no
Breakfast
application,
All meals.
none of that. My students are my oldest two children are currently in a school that is completely free.
Yeah, I want to share this with everyone. This is a fact that we stood up for children, because there's a Messiah tribe in Eastern Africa who greets each other with a language of saying, "How are the children?"
Right.
And when we brought that back to become a philosophy about our educational opportunities in Richland 1-1, the most critical things was that while everyone was celebrating snow days, we were sitting in the office pondering, why should we close? Because it's a battle of safety, a battle of critical safety towards a kid's hunger needs, because many kids don't eat when our schools close. So whenever we have a hurricane that hits, our kids are not eating when they go home. When there's a snow day, we close down for 3 days, our kids are waiting to come back into our classrooms because they're missing meals.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
yes.
We're gonna get right. We're gonna come back to you right after this. Feel free to think freely. Education reform. Facebook Live. Sending your messages.
Lunch should be free for all.
For everybody. And, I don't know.
Facts.
Gotta work.
This is Free by Tadashi.
So while we're not on,
I don't agree with that because there are some people. If you got a boat at your house, chances are you should not get free.
right. Real quick though, before while we're not on live show, I would like to while we're not on podcast, I would like to defend myself in something. You made a statement earlier that really, and it made me shut my mouth because I never want to come back out of a bad place. So you made a statement that I don't know what poverty is. I would like to explain to you that, first of all, my dad is from a third world country. I serve in a church where most of our children are in poverty, real poverty, living 6, 7, 8, 10 men in one house. These children, not only do they have no income in their house, but they also have no chance of a future because they don't have papers because their parents brought them here at 8 and 9 months old. So I would like to defend myself in saying that you can't say that I haven't seen it. I have also lived in free housing. I have received free lunch. My parents did it all for me. Now, am I struggling through that? Absolutely not, and I praise the Lord for that I don't have to do that. And I understand what free lunch is, but I don't, and I got
to go. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Well, just so you
And
know, both
we
clear.
are back. Freethinkers Radio. We are going to head right back over to Aaron Bishop.
Thank you, Beth. What I was just sharing with everyone is that it's a critical need to make sure we care about our kids because our kids, as we all know that adage, are our future. And so when I said that statement of how are the kids or how are the students or how well are the children, it was a thought of how is our future. Like when we talk about this, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about the now or are we talking about the future? And that's what I want to share because I know we have a lot to contribute today. But when it comes down to it, the health and welfare of our leaders of tomorrow is what matters. We get into the minutia of what it's about and who it's about, and we're missing the whole general picture of tomorrow.
Hey, one of the things that I want to jump in here, this is Kevin, I'm sorry. I was one of those guys who got sick and tired of sitting and pointing fingers and telling kids, pull your pants up, telling parents, be a better parent. So what I did was, I designed this school. I'm not an educator, but as I prayed, God told me I was a leader. I can lead anybody. You know what I mean? And so when I start putting this together, all of the opposition started coming. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? I grew up in the area they call the Hill. They call it New Brooklyn in Orangeburg. And so drug infested. But the crazy thing is we had drugs around this neighborhood, but we was all taken care of. I was in a poor neighborhood, but I never got free lunch because my mother and my father worked. You know what I mean? But I always had my father, always had my best friend's father, I always had all of the men in this neighborhood to stick behind me. So I'm not that cat that's got that, I never had my dad involved. So when I'm writing this charter, right, I basically wrote it just like I was raised. You know what I mean? And so now when I'm putting this together, I was told I had a social school. And what that meant was, when we sitting here and the brother was talking about the free lunch and knowing what poverty is, I sat in more, I'm gonna say moist couches that was used as the chair to the table. I've been in more places where I could stand in, look at the ground and the sky. I've recruited a kid that lived in an 11,000 square foot house and a kid that stayed in a 700 square foot trailer. And so one of the things I did with Garden City Prep was I said they would never know the difference when they come in and out of these doors. That's why everybody wore a red bow tie. That's why everybody wore a red vest. That's why everybody had. So here's the thing, though. I wanted everybody to wear a uniform, but I never said your parents have to pay for it, because if they showed me they couldn't pay for it, I did it. Gotcha. Right? So we had a closet, right? A kid could come in, and they knew, because I taught them, they come in and they can sign out underwear, socks, deodorant, toothpaste, toothbrush, whatever they need. To life. Right? Because I seen it, I lived it, I've been around it, right? So it's no embarrassment. You come sign it out. You go see the counselor and talk about it. If something happened, I didn't have a guidance counselor, because my priority right then wasn't a career. My priority was teaching them day by day. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so they come in and talk to the counselor. Well, Mama, I got a new uncle in the house. People don't understand how that affects kids. They didn't eat last night because he's scared about what's going to happen to his mom.
Right.
So when he comes in, right, one of the things that is, we talk about USDA. One of the things you can't do, I can't offer seconds to that kid, right? As the leader of the school.
Right.
But see, I was a 24/7 mentor. So when I talk to you outside of the school, I said, when there's still food there, you go eat it until it's gone.
Absolutely.
Right? So kind of going through that, everything that they wouldn't have at home, I already knew what most of them wouldn't have. I provided it. We did haircuts. We took them everywhere. We exposed them to everything outside of poverty. I'm one of those cats that I have an issue with putting schools in poor neighborhoods all the time because they live there, they go to school there, they go to church there, they play there. When are they ever out of poverty? So that's why I would take them to Boeing. I took them to, I remember when we took them to BMW, the lady that was there, this black lady that was an engineer that was at BMW, she cried. Because she said, I've never seen anything like this before.
And see, that leads to where I kind of wanted to go with the next thing. When we're talking about parental empowerment, because on one end you have the far end of that, which is homeschooling, right? The fully parentally empowered education would be homeschooling, correct? But then you have, a school that kind of tries to take the place of the parent. You know what I'm saying? In certain issues. So. At the opposite end of that, I would say some of that is offered. I would hope that most parents don't, take full advantage of every benefit of every doggone program to do your part in your own child's life. Yeah. Where should the line be, though, as government officials who deal with this? Where should the line be between what you trust the parent to do, because some parents just should not have that responsibility and personality building sometimes.
David, that's the argument that we have in this country about all issues, not just education, because there are people who fundamentally believe, I think they're crazy as spray roaches, but that's just my opinion, but there are people who fundamentally believe that government has no role in people's lives. I disagree with that.
I disagree
and
as well.
I believe that government has certain obligations that have been set aside from the foundation of this country. I believe government should provide certain things. Now, I'm not saying government should be in the handout business, but the bootstraps in the handout business, I do believe that. And providing the opportunity for access to a good quality education, in my opinion, is a fundamental role of government. Why? Because at the end of the day, if we produce young, productive citizens, and thanks to my friend over here on the Richland One School Board, Richland One is taking tremendous strides towards that, then they are better for this country as a whole, because they are our future doctors, lawyers, and K-12 education, Ms. Joni, is a training ground for them to be prepared for whatever their next step will be. And that's how you change poverty, my friend down there. That's how you change the conversation of poverty. The reason why Antoine Seawright can sit here today in my capacity, I was community poor, but I was economically poor, but community rich. But education gave me my opportunity to make my quality of life better than my parents had. And if we can do that well, perhaps we can change the conversation from the have and the have-nots and move to an equal playing field for most people in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, for me, so my kids have been in public school, they've been in private school, and now we homeschool. And all of them have been great for our children. But in the time in life that we have been in, that is why we have switched between those three different ways. So I've seen many different ways to school your children, and what works for us in our time of life right now, because I travel a lot, my husband works on the weekends, it works best for us to homeschool, because sometimes we have meetings late in the night. And so, you know what? My kids have to come with me. We don't have family around to watch our kids late. So they come with us. They need to sleep in the morning. Sleep is important. So I think that for the whole government needs to have a role in the life. I think there's like this fine line, because I want to be able to educate my kids how I believe. And when we look at the government as a whole, like, there's a lot of education that I think I need to teach my kids differently. Do they still get the fullness of education that is offered in public school? Absolutely. They have a very well-rounded education, but we also do a lot of what's currently called unschooling, which means that you teach, like you parent your kids. Like that's what it's called. Like
But-
it means you
but
parent
Beth,
your kids.
I-
And I am able to do that. It is not for everybody, and I get that. It wasn't for us 5 years ago. But I want to be able to have the ability to. My husband was homeschooled for his whole entire life. Now he has 2 master's degrees, but he had to stay in his house when he was younger because it was not okay. Like you could come have social services knock on your door. Like this is things that are slowly changing, and homeschooling is becoming more of a thing. But those are things that we have to address.
Beth, with all due respect, there are a lot of kids in this country where their parents don't have a home to go to.
Well,
So
okay, so I was about to jump in right there and agree with you.
Yeah,
okay, so
homeschooling,
here's the
homeschooling
thing,
is not
though.
an option.
Being able to homeschool is truly a blessing. Okay, because we have considered that now that I've transitioned out of public education, I'm at home with my younger children. But we didn't consider homeschooling because we felt that the public school is failing our children. Okay.
Right.
And so I think that when you have the conversation with people that are homeschooling, you need to be open-minded enough to know that everybody that chooses to homeschool is not because they believe that the public education school system is failing. I believe in public school. I will always believe in public school because I am a public school educator. I'm still secondary certified. I can go right back in the classroom. But if I ever chose and considered often to homeschool my children, it would not be because I believe that the system is failing. And if I ever did homeschool my children, I would still be over at the same school that my kids are in public school right now, helping them.
And then, but the question is about homeschool, like whether your kids are being exposed to a diverse world. You know what I mean? If your kid,
Yeah, but see that's part of just teaching them how to be sociable.
well, here's the thing,
and exposing them.
Well, here's the
That's
thing about
if you
here's the
know
thing-
sociability.
But here's the thing about that. Most parents, the ones I know who are in poverty, we're going back to this poverty conversation. They don't have much of a, I guess, education level to be able to homeschool their child.
It's not for everybody, and
I
that's
get
what
it.
I've said.
And for me, my homeschool has never been an option for me. Why? Because the things I'm able to do now, prior to post college, I would not even know some of this stuff exists in the world. And so that is most of America, right? That is most of America. So this idea, good. I think for people who have the option, good for them. Check a box, do cartwheels. But for a lot of people, that's not their reality because homeschooling, they don't have a home to go to. And for the ones who do have a home, look, they probably worried about whether the lights are going to be on when they get home, whether they have running water, electricity. I mean, that's the reality for most people in America.
I mean, most people have working parents. I mean, it's not.
I work
2 jobs.
No, I mean, like they go to work 8 to 5, or they work
And
their
even
third
5
shift,
to 10.
or they work in the middle of
my
the night,
parents.
and one parent is home at the regular shift, another parent's working third shift. I mean, the homeschool is sort of like, for those families, is a joke. I get that. My point is that when you do homeschool, don't think that you can't expose your children to diversity in those environments, because if you're going to be that engaged of a parent to homeschool, then you need to be that engaged of a parent to enforce the diversity around your children through athletics. My children play on both sides of town. Okay, we don't stay on one area. They have a lot of different friends. I'll just say that.
Take them to the hood.
No, they play in the hood.
Let them hear gunshots, because that's
So my question is, should the government, because we're talking about how parents, if you're going to homeschool, you should bring your kids around diversity and all that thing. So what does the government play a role in that? Is there some sort of
there are regulations.
Well, she can answer that question because she's in that business.
Yeah, well, there are guidelines. There are guidelines and there's a homeschooling association, but the State Department has pretty intense guidelines. But one of the things that I think is most interesting is in the public school, we have to be certified, except for charters having out. But really, the homeschool, you just have to graduate from high school. So that always concerned me about the homeschooling.
So my kids are in a certified program where they have actual benchmarks to meet.
Right.
I don't teach them personally. They school from my home, but everything is online.
Online, right? So we are actually doing virtual.
Goes back to that conversation we had last week about access to bandwidth.
Absolutely, and it's not for everybody.
Absolutely.
It wasn't for us earlier, so feel free to think freely. This is a good conversation, guys.
Feel free to educate freely.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
So I guess my question is, with sorry, go ahead. My bad. Animal.
No, I thought it was off. I thought it was off. Go ahead. Okay.
Up next, this song is called Undeserved by Anthony Nelson and the Overcomers.
So, like, I may not deserve forgiveness after interrupting James while ago. So my question is, so the United States, if we look at a lot of the major countries around the world, we're like dead center, all right, when it comes to our education system.
There's a reason, but go ahead.
Well, my question is, what is some of the stuff that we can pull from to create a better education system?
Well,
Specialized education.
can I answer that real quick? Well, one of the things that I've been kind of privileged to do is I've been all around this world. I've spent a lot of time in third world countries, not by just visiting.
Right.
I was working, but I think we got to understand that we are in a society to where people can do whatever they want to do. When you start talking about these other countries, you go to school or we put your behind on in this military and you got to do this and you're still going to go to school. So there's so many different options here. I don't think that we're ever going to be like the top tier country.
Because it's not a priority.
And we're back. We are back. We are back. I wanna go right back into. I'm sorry. We're gonna go back to Ms. Lawson first.
Okay. Well, someone asked, what can we do? And one of the things that in research and what we're looking at, because, of course, we have a lot of failing schools and people are frustrated about that. And that's an excuse for saying public schools aren't well. And there are reasons for that. But one of the concepts that you're finding now to address that is what's a concept called community schools. Mm-hmm. And you really have to have public-private partnerships to really, really attack a lot of those issues. You got to have more health care services in the school. For example, I remember several years ago, we were working on a bill and it was something about eye care or something. And somebody wrote me and said, why are you guys lobbying for this? And so I actually ended up finding them just by chance. And I said, well, if a child can't see, they can't read. I mean, they can't learn. So we have to be engaged in the whole child. And that's what community schools are about. Right. And that's really kind of been the answer, I think. It's either Indiana or Ohio that really did like a big bond referendum to fund that, and they have turned test scores around and everything by doing community schools.
I got turned down because the school that I created is actually a community school.
Okay.
Because of field studies, because of what we did as far as catering to the entire child. I was one of those guys that when we had a storm, and you said how you could debate, it didn't matter to me. I wasn't off. I still had to go check on my kids because the other side of us was the mentorship. And so when I go, and I had a parent that I had to battle with, she said she wanted to homeschool her son. And so this is one of the few times that I felt like I embarrassed the parent, because I stood in her house and I said, ma'am, would you want to be in this house all day long? Look around you. Would you want to be in this all day long? Smell it. Look at it. So why are you gonna go to work and you gonna leave him in this house all day long when you don't even have to be here? So, when we start talking about the reality of what this is, we start talking about community schools and we talk about reform. I'm one of those guys that we've never really had a full reform anything. In 1800s, when slaves, actually the people started helping slaves read, guess what they did in 1800? They cut out public schools altogether, stopped it until they knew that only whites or whomever was going to be the ones that's educated. That's right. South Carolina educational system was created in 1868. It has not been changed yet.
Minimally adequate is the standard according to our Constitution.
When we start talking about reform.
Sure is. I want to add on to, you asked about what was the line we have to address. It's a line between equality and equity. And that's been the biggest conversation, because look at the social landscape of what is needed. We almost got to make sure that our teachers are no longer teachers. We're teaching our teachers to be facilitators, because we got to make sure that they're putting themselves in a position to advance the kids' agenda, the students' agenda, to a level where they all are learning. And even Richmond One offers something called Parent University. You can imagine the bridge of the gap between a parent who's trying to learn what the child is learning,
Right.
I think that's a really good point. Bridging the gap, parents not really knowing how to help their kids and that sort of thing. And as far as the idea of kids being in school and teachers being more like facilitators at this point, I think that's a big problem that I had in high school. I think I had maybe 2 teachers that I actually feel like truly taught me.
Yeah.
Out of my entire 4 years of high school, I'd say maybe 3 teachers that actually taught me, while the rest put stuff up on the board, said copy this down, and left it at that. And I think that obviously there are good teachers out there, there are good schools out there, but from my personal perspective, going to public school, I feel like there are still a lot of areas that really need to be to get better.
And when did you graduate, James?
I graduated 2010.
Really close.
So I mean, I'll put it to you this way: my mom homeschooled me. She put me out of public school and homeschooled me in 5th grade. I'd been going to public school before that and after that, but for 5th grade, she pulled me out of public school and she homeschooled me. And I think I was in 5th grade reading at like an 8th grade level, and my grades got better, and it wasn't just because I had the answers, it was because I knew how to do what I needed to do. Then I went back to public school, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure my IQ dropped.
But David.
Do we feel like sometimes, and I don't know, Catherine, I know there's some people that teach in younger schools, but do we feel like sometimes teachers' hands are tied? Because that is a little bit how I felt when the last year my kids were in school, is because so my daughter was having some struggles, and she knew all the answers, but she didn't know the answers the way that they wanted her to show her work. So she showed her work the way that she was taught in the public school we came from in Florida, but then she didn't show it in the new way that the teacher, and I talked to the teacher, and the teacher said, I'm so sorry, like I can't do anything. She has to show the work the way that we are being told she has to show her work.
And that goes back
You're
to
talking
what
about Florida's Jed Bush's private school ran state.
No. What she's talking about, and I think, and you can, and anybody can get on and correct me, is there was the Common Core implementation of, we'll just use math, for example. A lot of the students would come home, and this is what I was hearing from parents. I was at the high school level, and I was hearing it from parents who had children in middle and elementary. I don't know how to help her with her math homework. Okay, so this is back to implementation that I was speaking of. When you introduce a new way or new concepts that you're going to try to have students master skills, those types of concepts need to be taught in sort of like a parent university, so that when my child brings me her 3rd grade math, I can say, oh, you know what? I was in that meeting and I know how to show you this. They're trying to get you to think this way. Mommy learned it like this, but I'm going to show you like they taught you. And having the parent be able to engage with their child to support what's going on in the classroom. Parents cannot do that when they get bombarded with the work coming home and they're like, I didn't learn it this way. I cannot help you.
And as well as implementation in the sense of, my daughter was in 3rd grade, but the way that she was taught in Maryland, or no, she was in 4th grade, but in Maryland, my daughter was in a very good school in Maryland. And then in Florida, it was the same, the way that they taught was the same. And then coming to South Carolina, when they changed the Common Core, it's because she learned for how many grades to do it one way, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, I know you got the right answer, but you can't get the answer.
Are they teaching trainability though?
Well, here's the thing. I think that we truly don't want to deal with the larger issue, right? You ask, what can we do? In a lot of countries, education is not on an agenda; it's a priority, and that's the difference of what we have not.
And additionally, it's also for, in a lot of these countries that we get compared to, it is for the elite. These countries that we are always side by side with, when they're saying, oh, they're up here and we're down here, they have a cherry-picked student population.
It's more homogeneous.
Right. We do not do that. We are expecting our teachers to have every child in their classroom think at a higher level higher order thinking skills. We do the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Every single child, whether they're kinesthetic, visual, auditory, whether they have a learning disability, emotional disability, they are all supposed to think at this level.
Exactly.
And that child that can do that is cherry picked in other countries to go to school, and the child that can't is given a trade.
Well, here's the thing. I think that at the end of the day, education is not on the agenda; it's a priority. For instance, for the ones who do go to school, they go to school longer than kids in America. And you're right. They don't always make the cut on being at the top, but they are prepared to do something in a trade. That's why Richland One on their agenda, their legislative agenda, is to have a vocational high school program. I think where you graduate with a certification, all those things. But to go to the issues to dig a little deeper, we have to have real education reform in this state and in this country. We haven't had that. We have not had that for a very, very long time. Minimally adequate is the standard for education in South Carolina. That was during a time when mills and a lot of other things were popular. That's no longer today. So when we think about the role of a teacher, the role of a parent, I said we had a conversation earlier, but poverty is different in 2017 than it was different than when you experienced poverty, or maybe some people you know. And so we have to keep, just like everything else, we have to keep updating our education system to keep up with the times. And we haven't done that in South Carolina for sure. And I don't think we've done that in America. And that's why we're in the game that we're in when it comes to education in this country.
Right.
And the reform part of the reform needs to be about supporting the teachers in the classroom. And I know that I have a slant, but when you have excellent professional development and you have support, you've got these large classrooms and you have the ability to co-teach, blended learning, all of that comes into play. You are getting your students to think at a higher level. You're helping them take charge of their education, and you will have better thinkers that leave your classroom. It starts with the professional development. And we talk about where money is allocated here and there. That's a big piece of the pie. You never try to create a business or any organization without developing the people that are running and driving the business itself.
The thing that I wanted to say is I think we have in place, there's a lot of that already going on. I just still think the thing that we've never really had is the commitment. The commitment part is what's missing. I mean, every year when we're fighting on the budget, when we're fighting to try to get the base student cost up, when we're looking at on this bill that I've been working on intensely, people not wanting to put the word public for a description for the person who's going to be our state superintendent. That's not commitment. That says that they're not committed to public education.
That's a hidden agenda.
It's a hidden agenda. So until we get commitment, then all of the other things that we're working on, that Richland One is working on, we have EEDA that's looking at, it's trying to bring children since 2005, 2006 to look at careers and talking about doing other things besides college prep. So we have things here and there. It's just no commitment to bring it all together.
I just want to add on to what you're talking about as a fight. Many people don't know we are on 2010 funding levels.
Right.
And I'll keep it right there.
Right.
No need to explain that. It's 2017.
I got a real concern here. We were talking about how the government has responsibilities for food and things like that. And I can't say that I disagree, especially hearing from you guys. And I will admit, hearing from you guys really does open up parts in my mind that I didn't consider completely. So, but one thing that really does bother me is I really feel like that the church has a responsibility here with our students. And I feel like if our churches, and I'm not saying our church in specific because our church does do a lot, but if our church as United States Church, the whole church, if we focused on meeting those students' needs in their personal lives like your school is doing and things like that, then the schools wouldn't be having to strive to do that.
You assume, first of all, that everybody goes to church. I'm not picking at you. I'm not saying do it just for the students that go to church. I'm saying doing it for the children in general.
Community.
I get it. But you assume that most people go to church. You assume that most people trust
No,
churches.
I don't.
Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point.
Yeah, but
You
you're
ass-
reading into something she's not saying.
I'm trying to get it out of her what she's trying to say. You assume that most people trust their churches as
right
they
there,
did in one point in time. You assume that we live in a country in which certain religions and church may be different, and we want to ban those people from coming to this country. There are a lot of things that go into this idea of the role
And
of a
we'll
church.
be right back. Feel free to think freely.
Awkwardly
Yeah,
enough, I feel
yeah.
like this conversation is just getting warmed up, even
Yeah,
though we
that-
sort of
that
switched
is-
topics
that's
in a
it.
way.
And
But
I'm not.
this
I'm
is warmed
literally
up
not picking
by
at
Swoop.
you. I'm just. We're thinking.
Hold on,
freely.
he's trying to.
Let me knock the song real quick.
All right, that's cool. I did it already. They'll hear all the rest of that too.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't know you were announcing the
Well,
song.
there is a pushback, though. I will say that, against church-based sponsored things. You know what I'm saying? I will say there is anybody who's in ministry like that, there is a pushback.
I think what Lexi is saying is simple. If the church, as a body, was doing its job and following what Jesus has taught us to care for the orphans, care for the children, care for the widows,
Regardless of their religion.
regardless of whatever they believe, if the church was to step up and do their job like we're supposed to,
Like some
That's
churches
it.
are doing.
Yeah, some are doing, but
But
you assume that
there is a
everybody can afford to do those
pushback. That's what I'm-
things.
There's people who would not allow you to do that.
But
You're coming from the church.
you assume that every church can afford to do those things.
But the people, the thing is, there is enough people here that are successful, that are wealthy, that are serving the Lord. And if those people, as the church, the people of the church stood up and did their part and gave their money, like we should be doing as a church, not to the government, not to this, not to taxes, but gave it to the church for them to do what they're supposed to do.
Both.
But we gotta pay taxes. We
gotta
gotta
do both.
pay
We're doing
light
both.
bill.
We got to do both.
And we're back.
And we're back.
I'm not saying don't pay taxes.
Freethinkers Radio. So we were. So Lexi had a point saying that if the church handled more of the community's the things the community needs were handled more by, I would say, I'm hoping you mean church and other nonprofit organizations that have the same.
Well, David, I think it's
I'm
more.
talking about church, the people, the
Body.
believers, people
Not
that
simply the
follow Lord.
organization, but the people.
Yeah.
I get it.
Well, so the people who believe in that cause would all give.
That goes
to-
back to
Okay, yeah.
being a part of a community, and I don't mean church. I mean living life together with people who are different than you, with reaching out, inviting people to your homes that maybe don't have the same things as
Yes.
you, on both sides, the wealthy and the people in poverty, and not being like, here's a handout, but let me link arms with you. I love you because of who you are. Let's build a friendship. And then you have this bond, and then you can help differently.
But Beth, you assume that people in communities want to do that.
Yes.
Listen
No,
to me.
no,
You
no,
have
no.
politicians who live in communities who don't believe it's okay
You're
to
right.
fund certain things that will help brothers and sisters
You're
in
absolutely
need, right?
But as Christians, we are called from Scripture
Sure we are.
to help our neighbor, to not pass by when we see someone on the road.
You mean like not provide health care for 300,000 working people in South Carolina and say take to the floor?
I can't do that.
I get what you're saying, but
You know what
I'm
I
giving
mean?
you I'm giving you a
But guess
prime
what?
example of
If you
political
need
reality.
if you need food, I can provide that for you.
Right.
You need your light bill taken care of. I can help you with that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
If we did more of that, if those of us who know right from wrong did more of
The
that.
fear.
But my
some of-
friend,
I
there
think
are
some of the
people who-
fear of that is that allowing the people that are in charge of helping through a church get to choose who they want to help. I think there's a definite mistrust on a lot of people that have traditionally been
You're right.
ostracized in the church, that they would be on the chopping block of, I'm not going to help you, but I might help the person
Right.
next door. And so I think there's a lot of fear there with allowing the church to jump in that area because
we need to deal with
because
that.
And then we need to
And-
deal with elected
I mean,
officials.
having a
who can-
conversation about how the church ostracized certain people of color or whatever
Yeah.
is like a whole nother show.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it,
Would they
I-
feed
I just
someone who they
think-
won't marry?
But take
or they
take.
wouldn't let their child
Okay.
date.
But David,
Yeah.
take church
Okay.
take church out of a minute and talk about people who claim to be the church. These are people who are in leadership roles in our countries, in our communities, in our states, and who don't want to literally do the very same things that you say that we should be doing. And they are people who you, me too, elect to be in these positions to oversee
I'm
some
glad
of these
you
things.
said me too.
For an example, well, most of the people that I vote for, they understand, they represent communities that need
There we
help.
go.
I'm just being real.
There we go.
I'm just being real. So, for an example, you have Betsy Duval, going back to the conversation, a lady who is of the Republican Party, GOP, God's on the party, who talk about cutting free lunch for poor kids.
Ms. Lawson?
Again, National School Lunch. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Lawson.
Well, I like what you're saying. I truly, truly like what you're saying. I think the issue is, and I say this a lot, is when you look at the number, and I was trying to pull this up, every year the Pew Research Center does a study about, and survey people about whether they're believe in God, and every year that goes down. So once you get that going, I think the last study I was just looking at in 2007, you had 71% of the people said they believe in God. By 2014, it was 60-something%. So right. So once the number is going down, you have less people available to do that, and that's sad. So we have to work on that.
But do we feel like that if the church was doing their part, more people would understand? If you were loving like Jesus loved,
Right, I
more
agree.
people would follow the Lord. I really believe that with all my heart. If we did a good job of reflecting Jesus, people
Ask the pastor
would.
about
Well,
that.
can I?
Yeah,
One of the things
we are going to end up going to
and one of the
Pastor
things
Bishop.
that
That's a whole
I
different
that I wanted to kind of put into this, the separation of church and state, right? And so for me, I was that guy. I guess I was always the villain, right? Because I care about my kids, right? Whether you Protestant, I don't, holy, I don't, doesn't matter. Because see, when you came to me, when you start talking about we need to put prayer in schools, I ask you, what prayer do you want? You want Buddha? What do you want? I care about the kids. And so when it comes to that, if the church want to help, let's help. But what I'm not going to do is get in a battle of let's do this. I should tell my teachers, we used to have professional development. Don't come complaining to me about what the parent is not doing. We're a social school. We're a community school. So whatever the parent is not doing, you tell me, we fill the gap. We get the kid, because see, in the meantime, while we trying to figure out where mama is and where daddy is and all this other stuff, day by day, this kid is getting more and more on the other side of this. And so, it's all about the kids for me. I mean, if the church kick in, they kick in.
The difference between the church and the education system of governmental bodies is this. You're right. The church can be selective, but as a elected official and a servant of the public, I put my right hand on the Bible and raise it to God. That's the only connection between what I can see at the church and state. Where I did one thing that every elected official had to do. We had to say one word that was powerful than all the words in our oath. All. And does all mean all? See, in the church, it doesn't mean all.
Right.
Let's just be truthful.
And
For elected officials, we got to make sure all means all. That's why it should, but it's not on all cases. You're right.
Yeah, I think it's understanding, like, what I mean when I say church. I don't talk about an organization.
Yeah.
I don't mean church as an organization, as a nonprofit, as whatever it is. I don't mean it that way. I mean the people. I mean the body.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I say church. On another thing, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, fns.usda.gov, the National School Lunch Program, it's subsidized by the USDA.
Yes.
Okay, subsidized.
Subsidized, not overseen. There's a difference.
Not
They
overseen.
don't make
Okay,
the
so
decisions.
so I just want to say so let's make sure that because yes, the church is the people, but the accountability of scattered people who are accountable to,
Right.
you know what I'm saying, accountable to a power who is not telling the other person who, you know what I'm saying, when the other person, you see what I'm saying? So you still have to look at the church as an organization.
And
You see
to
what I'm
be
saying?
and
Still have to
so
look at it that way.
with our when we were partnering with a school and involved in many different ways. One thing that we did was like Thanksgiving meals. And we worked with the social worker at the school, and one thing that they said was you can't put your church information in it. And we were like, oh, well, we weren't planning on doing that. We're not doing this for ourselves. And the school said that a lot of times churches will put in all their marketing so they can get people to come to their church. So they're not actually doing it to benefit the families. They're doing it then as a alternative of getting more people into their doors.
They're doing it as marketing.
As marketing. And so I think that that's where, like, where is our hearts behind? Why are you giving? Are you giving because that is what Jesus has called us to do as the church? Or are you giving because you have an ulterior motive?
Right.
And he didn't call us to give only to the Christian children. He didn't say don't give to the Muslim hungry child that's at school.
Right.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear. We're not talking about Christians who are being selective in who they're giving to or who they're taking care of.
This has been a great
Isn't it?
How did we get to the faith conversation?
Oh, we always end up there.
Is it because I showed up or something?
Urban Christian here, baby.
It's you're a table full of Christians right now. It's beautiful to see how we interact with the actual world around.
But David, I think we cannot leave here and think that this country was designed for to be an equal playing field. That wasn't the premises that this country was built on.
I don't think that anybody at this table thinks that.
Well,
I don't think anybody said that either.
Well, I'm not saying you have, but I'm just saying when we leave here and we talk about education going forward, I think we have to be clear in our understanding that the system wasn't designed or set up to have an equal playing field in education. But that do not mean that we can't do our best to try to make it that way. I never said that anybody said that, to be clear.
I'm only saying something so Antoine Seawright doesn't get the last words on the show tonight.
I'm fine with that.
But to that point, if we know that the educational system we have now was designed in 1868, right?
Yeah.
So in 1868, if we know that's what it was designed to do, then it was designed to omit the majority of the people in this room.
It's like trying to use a Packard Bell computer at work.
Right. So when we start talking about reform,
Yep.
you know, it always amazes me that we have
everything else is evolving. Everything, except for the schoolroom.
Right. So
except for the thing that will make us evolve.
Right. Exactly. So when do we draw the line and say we reforming this right now? Right.
And part of that is going to see those classrooms that have evolved. I have sat in those rooms, and it is amazing to watch those children think. I have seen classrooms that have evolved.
We ain't got but 3 minutes left. They're gonna cut us off. I can tell you that.
David, it is easier as we end Black History Month. It is, and we talk about Frederick Douglass.
Say it.
It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men.
Absolutely. And with that, you've had a chance to enjoy us. We've had a chance to enjoy y'all. This has been Freethinkers Radio. Let me tell you something, Pastor Bishop. Pastor Bishop, say what you're gonna say, man.
I just want to thank you for inviting me, man. It's the only chance I have to say thank you on my first time, so thank you. All right.
Absolutely. And thank you too, obviously, Pastor Aaron Bishop, the great Kevin Raspberry,
the honorable Pastor,
the honorable Pastor Bishop, the amazing Miss Joni Lawson, and the never ever let us down. Never let me down. That's
never,
a Kanye.
That's definitely Kanye.
Get up, I get.
Antoine
Seawright, Swansea's own. Stand up.
Big thank you to Catherine Robinson.
Big thank you to Catherine Robinson.
Yeah,
you need to get back in the classroom, you. Huh? We need you around here.
For real.
That's it.
She's advocating from the sideline, though.
I am.
She
Okay.
is all
Yeah.
Right wing friends down there on the other side.
I'm that parent. I'm a helicopter parent.
I need you to come in and GM some stuff. Magic Johnson. There we go. Hey,
Speaking of
Lexi, turn up.
Speaking of Richland one, shout out to Keenan Raiders and LR being in the state championship this week.
You don't want to turn up. Ice, what's good, bro? Keenan Raiders, baby, we back. Oh. Love y'all. See y'all next week. And make sure y'all continue this conversation at home, though, because we didn't get a chance to cover everything. We can never cover everything when it comes to education.
Part 3.
Absolutely, right? Part 3.
Feel free to think freely.
Feel free to think
Peace out.
freely. Yeah.
As far as the east is from the west. Searching for
Are we off?
I love coloring
I
outside
gotta let my
lines.
blood pressure.
I know.
I know, right?
Are we off Facebook Live?
I'll go make a handout for your meeting.
Nikki just
Don't
called
say
me. I'll
anything
call
you
him
don't
back.